Let me just introduce our two amazing faculty members. We have Paul Kerson, who's an attorney, is ranked as one of New York's super lawyers. He has more than 30 years experience as a judge, prosecutor, trial attorney, and legal negotiator. We have Joseph Yaminer, who served in the Israeli army and a border guard as an officer. He served at the Six Day and Yom Kippur Wars, and he admitted practice law in 1984. So help me introduce my two faculty members.
Okay, you ready? All right. This is the most fantastic story. You're not going to believe this story, but it really did happen. It really did happen. This is a CLE, so I have to tell it in a CLE context. Okay? In the CLE context, these are the subjects we're going to address tonight: trusts and estates, criminal law, civil procedure, constitutional law, international law, torts, contracts, property, administrative law, evidence, corporations, and commercial law, all in the same case, one case. It sounds like a bar exam, yes? It was, only it was way harder than that. I mean, unbelievable story. It'll take us a while to tell it because it starts as a very localized case concerning one very old man, and it ends up affecting the whole world. The one case. So here's how it started. It started, well, it really started, we have a small law firm. I met Mark Levitt at the Columbia Law School in 1974. We were in the same class in municipal finance, and we became friends. We had various jobs, and in 1982 we decided we're going to start our own law firm, which we did. Not that we had a lot of money, we actually, I don't think, had very much at all, but we started our own law firm. Levitt and Kerson. Later we had various other partners. Today it's Levitt, Kerson, and Duane. We're approaching our 30th anniversary, which means we've lasted a very long time. We were local lawyers in Queens. That's the way we started. And we were very active. That is, Levitt was president of the Kiwanis Club, and he was on the school board in Long Island City, and I was on the board of the Queens Bar Association, and I was editor of the newsletter of the Queens County Bar Association. So we were like locally prominent attorneys. We were not regional, national, international, or anything even remotely like that. So Levitt was a member of the Reform Synagogue of Forest Hills. And in the Reform Synagogue of Forest Hills was an old man, a man named Ferdinand Nacher, very depressed, very withdrawn, 90 years old. And he was approaching the end of his life, and he approached the rabbi of the Reform Synagogue of Forest Hills, Meyer Perlmutter, and he said that he had a big problem and he was looking for help. And Rabbi Perlmutter asked Mark to help Mr. Nacher. So Mark brings Mr. Nacher into our office, and this is Mr. Nacher's story. He's living on Social Security in a rent-controlled apartment. Not a wealthy man, or so we think. With him he brings the documents of seizure of a large industrial empire in 1934. As nearly as we can determine, the documents are in German, we don't read German, but we knew enough history to know that what these documents represented was the seizure of a multi-million-dollar business. Breweries, malt factories, hotels, restaurants. It was called Engelhart Breweries Incorporated, and his uncle Ignaz was the majority owner of this company, and he was the vice president. He was the nephew, the heir apparent, and he said, true or not, I don't know, he said this was the biggest restaurant, hotel, and brewery company in Germany in 1934, the equivalent of McDonald's and Anheuser-Busch and Marriott hotels all wrapped up into one. That's what he told us. And he had the balance sheets to prove it, the annual reports, and it turned out that the Dresdner Bank, 75 Wall Street, around the corner, has a branch. That will become very important later. Was the agent of the Nazis for seizing properties of Jewish businessmen. They started out, their anti-Semitism started out seizing property. Before they took life, they seized property. And they went for the biggest seizures that they could get, of which this was one of the biggest. And the Dresdner Bank had Ignaz Nacher arrested on false pretenses, brought him into the Berlin City Jail, put a pistol on the table, like that, and said, this will be your only way out of Germany if you don't sign over your stock certificates in Engelhart breweries. which he did, escaped to Switzerland, and died in 1938, leaving a will, which becomes important later in the case, making Ferdinand Nacher his executor. Ferdinand, who was the vice president of the company, after now the Dresdner Bank is the majority owner of the company, they hang a poster of the Nazi dictator on Ferdinand's wall to irritate him, and they say, well, you're not vice president anymore. You can be a commission salesman in Belgium if you'd like. So he was demoted in this corporation from the very top to the very bottom. So he goes to Belgium. He sells beer on commission to some Belgian bars and restaurants. Then his commission checks stop coming. So he makes it, as so many people before him and after him, New York City. He comes to New York City. And he's a refugee. And he's the executor of his uncle's estate, and his uncle hasn't died yet. His uncle dies in 1938, and he makes this his mission in life, to be the executor of his uncle's estate. Now, of course, you know world history, what happened after that. Anti-Semitism in Germany got way worse. Germany declared war on Europe. Germany declared war on the world. The United States came to the aid of England and France. World War II ensued. This was all done with Mr. Nacher's money. And other Jewish businessmen, not just him, but he was one of the leading seizures. Now, this is all being told to us, the story I just told. It's told to us, in our office in Forest Hills, next to the Queensborough Hall. So, I'm hearing this story, and I'm like bowled over by this. I mean, what are we supposed to do with this? Okay, now, I should do my personal background. My personal background is, lived in New York all my life. I knew my grandparents very well. They all lost their brothers and sisters in the Holocaust. People who have that in our background, in the early years, we never talked about it, not outside the home, not in the synagogue, not anywhere. It was considered a great shame and not something that you were proud of or wanted to have anything to do with. That was all through the 1950s and 1960s. 1970s, there started to be memorials. 1980s, there started to be big memorials, but the people who were most directly affected by it were always very skittish about this. So when Mr. Nacher is sitting here in my office, my first reaction to him was terrible anger. You were one of the richest men in Europe, and you let this happen. Well, what was wrong with you? But of course, I didn't say that. I didn't say anything like that. He was still looking to recover his uncle's assets from 1938. When I was talking to him, it was 1994. It was 60 years after the theft. This all happened before I was born. So what am I going to do with this? Well, the emotions of this were overwhelming. The first reaction was, well, there really isn't anything we can do. I mean, that's the bar exam answer. The statute of limitations passed. It happened on another continent. It clearly was a national government function to conduct World War II. I mean, this was out of our league. This was impossible. But I talked to Levitt, so I should tell you the relationship between me and Levitt. Levitt was my friend, and Levitt has this personality that nothing is impossible. That if you work at it, you can do it. An extremely friendly fellow. That is, he made Mr. Nacher tell the story. Mr. Nacher didn't like telling the story. He would try to get the property back. He would write letters every day, every week, to various American government officials, various German government officials, and he would get back a polite response, no, we can't help you. Also, he had gotten a modest settlement for his West German properties in 1956. So you remember the history of Europe. After World War II, Germany was divided. West Germany was a capitalist country. East Germany was a communist country. West Germany adopted our system of doing everything because we occupied it together with England and France. The East Germany adopted the Soviet system, entirely different system, no private property, no court system like ours, very different. So that was another problem. He already got a settlement. So the answer to this was no. But Levitt and I, especially my own personal background, we decided, okay, we're going to try and figure out a way to deal with this. So, how do you deal with this? And how do you find there's no textbook for this. There's no outline, there's no course, there's no nothing. So what motivated me, the 292,000 American soldiers died in World War II. My father was a captain in the U.S. Army in World War II. So I was like steeped in this. And then my grandparents lost their brothers and sisters. I knew my grandparents. I knew their sadness. There were 6 million Jews who died. There were 60 million people total who died. 60 million people. And this is all from Mr. Nacher's money, and he's sitting there in front of me. So I am motivated by those people. The 292,000 soldiers who died, the 6 million Jews who died, the 60 million people who died. I'm going to find a way. So I found a way. The first thing I thought of was, this was a crime at the time. Is it a crime now? Of course it's a crime now. The Dresdner banks on 75 Wall Street. Mr. Nacher told me that they were running out of money before they seized Engelhart breweries. So they must have some of the money at 75 Wall Street. They have some of the money at 75 Wall Street. Oh, there's a crime. Criminal possession of stolen property in the first degree. A Class B felony. Aha! Aha! It's happening right this minute. Right this minute. Criminal possession of stolen property. They never gave it back. Okay. Then there's scheme to defraud in the first degree. A Class E felony. Mr. Nacher told me that one of the things he did during his life is he would actually go to 75 Wall Street, he said, to see how my money was doing. See how my money was doing. So I said, okay, scheme to defraud in the first degree. Happening now. They're still defrauding him because he's still going to the bank, they're still not giving his money back. Okay, so now I think, aha, it's not about World War II. It's not about the Holocaust. All it is about is a Queens resident who will not be able to get his money back from a Manhattan bank. Now, I'm getting close. So I look, okay, I'm going to look into banking law. This concerns a bank, right? Okay, so I open up the banking law. This was a time before Westlaw. I open up the banking law. Sure enough, banking law section 200B1. I never heard of it before. It says if you set up a branch of a foreign bank in New York, you subject yourself to lawsuits by any resident for any cause of action. Any cause of action? Okay. Starting World War II with stolen money. That's my cause of action. And perverting civilization. That's my cause of action. So now I'm up to the statute of limitations. I have a substantive claim. I have a contract claim because they made him sign over the certificates. That was literally a gunpoint contract. Our courts don't recognize gunpoint contracts. It was a tort of conversion. They stole the money. It was also a crime. There's a specific statute authorizing this kind of a case. So how do I get around the statute of limitations? 60 years. Okay, here's my first thought. It didn't finish happening. As long as they didn't give him back the money, the statute of limitations never started. So my first point. Second point, well, what if they say it started? Okay. Then I'm going to do equitable tolling. You know about equitable tolling? The statute of limitations is tolled. Why? There's a tolling for war. There's a section that says if there's a war on, the statute of limitation is suspended. Okay. So 1934 to 1945 was a war against the Jewish people. 1941 to 1945 was a war against the United States. Now, in order to sustain the equitable tolling argument, I am leaving out the West German properties, because he got a recovery in 1956. So, I'm only going to go after the East German properties. So 1945 to 1989 is told because of the Cold War. Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union had really, it was close to a hot war. Along the East Germany, West Germany border were nuclear weapons, aimed at each other. Plus soldiers, lots of soldiers. It was a big, almost war. So, for statute of limitations purposes, I'm going to argue it was told for that. Now we're in 1989, up to the statute of limitations. It's 1994. When I'm doing this, there's a 6-year statute of limitations, so I'm within it if it started in 1989. I'm golden. I can do this. Where are we filing? We are not filing in a federal court. Forget it. Why not? Okay, here's why not. I figured this out in 1994. Ultimately, the federal government has to side with the Dresdner Bank. Must. Why? Because the Commerce Clause. Remember the Commerce Clause? Why is the United States here?